Ladies and gentlemen, drivers, gig workers, and everyone in between, welcome to This Week in Rideshare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Hoffa. It is Friday, August 7th, and this week, Uber brushes off the Waymo breakup. Philly has some choice words for Waymo, and drivers are being used for surveillance. Legal Rideshare breaks it down. And from Legal Rideshare, I'm joined by the co-founder and lead attorney, Brian Greening. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Jared. Great to be back for yet another episode.
I feel like we need to record. We could have like a bobblehead with you saying that. It'd be
I
perfect.
know. I know. I was just thinking about how repetitive I've been for the last, 12 years?
Yeah. I mean, I say the exact same intro every time. So, it's like in my sleep at this point.
Well,
Uh,
maybe we need to come up with different catchphrases. That's what we'll brainstorm for the next week
it's
is
good.
something different to say to start the show.
I love it. I think we should. That'd be good. And in terms of repeating, there's some repeating stories here, and actually some things that we discussed last week that are evolving. So I wanted to bring them up this week and get your thoughts on them. And of course, we discussed this last week. We talked about there'd probably be some sort of rebuttal, and there is, and it's of course due to Uber and the Waymo breakup. And Uber is really brushing it off. And this is from The Verge, and they reported, quote, Waymo is a very important partner of ours, and we continue to operate in Austin and Atlanta. We believe we'll continue to operate next year in those marketplaces. It's a terrific product, and the on-the-ground partnership continues to be very strong. Now, in the article, they say there's been plenty of evidence that points to a weaker relationship than they would like to admit, including the Uber CTO tweeting about a scary Waymo moment, and an Uber white paper that emphasizes a hybrid model of human and robot powered rides over an AV only model. And it also goes to talk about the fact that Waymo is the one that's really doing this at scale. And since the company has shown it can work in markets both with and without Uber's really network, it really seems like Uber needs Waymo more than vice versa. So, Brian, it is looking like, here's a response from Uber. Hey, it's not that big of a deal what Waymo said. In this article, they're literally saying the exact same words you said last week, which was Uber needs Waymo way more than Waymo needs Uber. That seems to be the
Yeah,
deal here.
I think that's right. I mean, Uber look, they're the giant in rideshare right now, and they have been for the past decade. There's no question about their place in the market. And I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. But you have to think that self-driving vehicles are the future. I think Uber has known that for a long time. They've been trying to get into the space. First, they were trying to do it on their own and develop the technology. They realized that they couldn't do it. They've now partnered with Waymo and other autonomous vehicle companies. They see the writing on the wall that rideshare is moving in that direction. So, would I rather be Uber today? Probably, because you have the entire market really at your fingertips. But if we're looking at the next decade, you have to think that Waymo is coming in and will be dominating big markets pretty quickly. So if Waymo can get downloads on the app, if they can steal part of the market share, they have the technology that people are going to want to use. And Uber is going to be scrambling to keep the market that they've developed. And I have to think that it's slowly going to fade, that there's going to be erosion of that market share that goes to the best self-driving companies. And right now, the crown jewel is Waymo.
Yeah, I gotta point this out because there is such a taste of irony in this story, and they mention it here. Last month it says the two companies found each other on opposite sides of a bill in D.C. that would legalize robotaxi service, with Waymo supporting it, and Uber pushing for a more traditional model. I say that this is so ironic because here is Uber, the company. 10 years ago, the story would have been, Uber is pushing for new regulations for ride sharing in cities. And now they're going, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't move so quick into robo taxis. Man, you can just taste the irony in that, they are now on the defensive when for so long they were the ones saying, no, you got to innovate. You got to be faster. You got to do these things. It's helpful. And now they're saying, wait a minute, let's not do that too quick. Pretty
Right. No,
wild.
you're calling it irony. I might call it hypocrisy. Like that.
True, true.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the bottom line. Uber's doing what it needs to do to try to protect its market share, and it sees that there are uh, people coming in, there are companies coming in trying to take that share, and they, as you said, they need to be on the defensive, or else they're going to lose a lot of the industry quickly.
Yeah, very interesting developments as always. I'm sure it's going to keep going, but definitely want to cover that story a little bit today. The second story today, since I'm currently outside of Philadelphia, Philly has some choice words for Waymo. They're saying, don't rush this. And this is from the Philadelphia Inquirer. And they reported, quote, Waymo's driverless cars have been rolling through Center City for almost a year now, still with trained specialists behind the wheel, still without a commercial launch date. Some of our elected officials have expressed concerns about driverless vehicles on Philly streets. Based on what has happened in other cities, their concerns are not unfounded. When it comes to deploying robotaxis, Philadelphia should slow down, not speed up. Under state law, PennDOT holds the authority to certify these vehicles for full commercial service. City officials have said Philadelphia is preemptive from regulating this technology at all. It sort of ends with this question for everyone. Here's the question I'd ask before this moves one step further in Philadelphia. Have the police officers, firefighters, and paramedics who will be on the street been trained specifically and verifiably to handle a car that will not pull over for a siren, will not respond to a hand signal or flare, and has no driver to negotiate with? I wanted to bring this up because, first off, big shout out to my home city here, Philly. But also, it's the first article that I've seen in a while that is really pushing slow down, look at for firefighters and paramedics. And this, it isn't just I'm annoyed, it's take a step back and chill. And I think it was a really well written article or opinion piece, and it really lays out the concerns, highlighting other cities. I think it's great.
Yeah, I love what they're talking about. I love the fact that the council members and the local government are taking this issue seriously. What There's a quote in the article that you looked at, and it was progress for the sake of progress isn't enough. We need to look at the impact of that progress, and I think that's exactly what this is about. It's for when Uber and Lyft came in, I think a lot of local governments were caught flat-footed. They said, okay, I guess this is the future. We're just going to stand back and let this industry take over. And in a lot of ways, we're still trying to recover from the lack of regulation. We're trying to recover from a lot of mistakes that were made early on by letting these tech companies just bulldoze their way into cities without any rules, without any regulation. They completely transformed transportation. And there was a lot of good, but there was also some bad. And when we're talking about autonomous vehicles, there's all sorts of safety concerns. There's all sorts of risk for how these vehicles are going to interact with the general public, as the article mentions. How are they going to respond with first responders? How are they going to be controlled when there's an incident, when there's an accident, if they're caught violating a traffic rule or regulation? So all of these things need to be addressed early. There needs to be tight regulation on who is responsible when things go wrong. How are these vehicles going to share information about safety and performance data with the communities to ensure that they're providing the right kind of service, and that the community members are not unsafe or burdened by their use in the areas. So I just, it's a long way for me to say I appreciate that these are conversations that are being had early on and before the technology just bulldozes its way onto our city streets.
Yeah, it's well said. And I think the thing that really stood out for me, that's a great quote, and I did see that. The other thing that they said right at the top of the story here, and will be interesting what happens moving forward, is, Waymo, driverless cars have been rolling through for almost a year, still with a person behind the wheel and still without a launch date. So, we had talked about when they got to Philly, yeah, about a year ago. And I was personally shocked because the Philly streets are windy and small, and it's not a grid system. And I was curious how they're going to handle it. Now, what this article is obviously showcasing is they still have people behind the wheel. So it doesn't look like it's ready anytime soon. Now, that being said, if miraculously in a month from now there's an article saying Waymo is driverless and you can book it now in Philly, I would be seriously concerned because it's clear they're not ready if they're at this spot a year later. So I think it's quite telling.
Right. No, I'm with you. And I think that part of the reason why they're not autonomous in Philadelphia is because the legislature has decided that they need to see more. They need to see, safety data. They need to understand that these vehicles are appropriate to be on the city streets. And I applaud them for not allowing Waymo to just run free, because I think if Waymo had its way, that's exactly what would be happening.
Yep. But as we know from Philly, they don't take any shit. So I'm a fan of what they're doing. So anyways, we're going to go to our final story this week. And it's actually kind of a scary one here. One company looked into turning drivers into surveillance vehicles. And this is from 404 Media. And they reported, quote, Flock planned to use dash cams installed in hundreds of thousands of Uber, Lyft, and delivery driver vehicles to scan license plates those drivers traveled past, essentially turning Uber and Lyft drivers into roaming surveillance vehicles. The document provides more details on Flock's planned partnership with Nexar. Most drivers know about Nexar. It's a popular dashcam company. So 404 Media first revealed the intended partnership last August when multiple sources provided information on the plan. The presentation shows Flock was actively pitching this partnership and its use of Uber and Lyft drivers to potential customers right around the time that 404 Media reported on it. Flock told 404 Media in an email that it never executed the partnership with Nexar, but the presentation still shows Flock's ambitious plan to conscript rideshare and delivery drivers to collect license plate data for its network. It is not clear whether Uber or Lyft or drivers working for those apps would have been aware of the data collection. I feel like this is a pretty terrifying story that they are able to get access to this, and this almost passed pretty much without anyone knowing about it. And from what I can tell, it doesn't look like Uber or Lyft knew anything about this.
Yeah, no, this is scary. This is like the surveillance state on steroids. The fact that we could have thousands of drivers surveying the city streets without anybody really knowing about it. What's scary is that I think that a lot of Uber and Lyft drivers would, perhaps check a box, click a button saying, sure, I'll do this without really understanding the repercussions, knowing that, maybe they get paid an extra couple bucks, maybe, so that they just have all these willing workers, all these people who might agree to do the surveillance without knowing the full extent of what was going on. And then exactly how is this data going to be used? Like all of this recording, all of this information, there just needs to be a lot more transparency. And there's a reason why we don't have vehicles driving around taking recordings of everybody. There's a reason why the police don't do this. There's a reason why there are laws against recording people without their knowledge. And it seems like all of that was going to be bypassed to the detriment of the community. We deserve privacy. We deserve transparency. And this sort of mass recording, mass surveillance is, it's Big Brother type stuff, and it's really terrifying.
Yeah, and the way that at least the way the article is highlighting this at 404 Media, they don't even really say if Flock would have reached out to drivers and said, hey, we'll pay you extra for this. This could have been a handshake deal between Flock and Nexar with no one really knowing, except maybe buried in the terms when you turn the camera on or install the update. And so this, like you said, this is security state type of stuff that is terrifying. And again, this came from 404 Media, which is interesting. And I'd be very curious to see if Uber or Lyft reach out or respond to this at some point. I feel like this is a much bigger story and may get covered by larger media outlets at some point. But the fact that this happened at all shows that A, it could happen again, and B, it's kind of under the radar. I mean, this only got revealed, if you read the article, because a hacker broke in and discovered this. So right. if that had not been exposed, this could be happening right now. And who knows if it isn't already in some places. We honestly don't know.
Well, and I think that's the scary thing, is when private companies start recording, what is the information going to be used for? Like, I guess on the least nefarious side. They're going to be selling information for like advertising purposes, finding out where people are, sending information to their, geo-targeting type stuff. But as soon as this information is collected, it can end up in the wrong hands. It can be used by people at the companies to perhaps stalk individuals without their knowledge. It can be perhaps subpoenaed by federal or state authorities to track individuals. There's so many ways that this data can be used, and without any guardrails up or frankly any knowledge that it's happening, it can be abused very, very easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Scary stuff. And again, I'd be curious to see if this develops any further and if there's any sort of response from Uber or Lyft. We'll see. But that is the stories for this week. And as always, Bryant, I will give you the final say before we head into the weekend.
Yeah, we just remind everybody that if you find yourself injured in a car accident or any other way on the job, we've seen it all. We've seen slips and falls. We've seen dog bites. We are available for free consultations. If you contact Legal Rideshare, you will get in touch with me. I am happy to walk you through the logistics of the insurance claim, make sure that you get full compensation for things like the cost of medical treatment, lost wages, pain and suffering, and any other damage that you sustain. All of our contact information is on our website, legalrideshare.com. I always encourage people to reach out quickly as cases and claims do not get better with time. And as I said before, consultations are always free, so there's no excuse to not reach out.
Thank you, Bryant. And as I like to say, that is the end of this week in Rideshare. See you next week.